Welcome to I Heart Geek. And welcome to another episode of I Heart Geek. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. We're doing villains of Spider-Man today, and this is a good episode. This will be an interesting conversation because I think it's going to go somewhere that we're not ready or we didn't expect it to go. I'm Dub. I'm here with Skeeter. I'm here with Griffin. I'm here with Blythe. How's everybody doing today? Everybody got your spider sense tingling up?
Feeling pretty tingly. Yeah, feeling pretty tingly, my friend.
You're
Very tingly.
So let me ask this question first off, because, I think that Spider-Man probably has the second most interesting villains in comic books. Maybe third, but probably second. What makes his relationship with the villains so good when honestly, the villains are as big a part of the story as Spidey in 99% of the stories? Why? What makes the villains so... I don't know, is it relatability? What? Let's start with Skeeter on this. He looks like he has something on that.
I just love the way he like, because he's a kid and he just talks crap to him. He gives everybody a nickname, like right off the bat. I mean, everybody he nicknames. Like Griffin and I have been watching Spectacular Spider-Man the last 3 nights. Like he knows I've got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get ready for work. But he's like, Dad, let's watch Spectacular Spider-Man at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. I'm like, I love you, kid. Okay, let's watch it. So we're up watching it, and I'm like, this is rad. But like Spidey's like fighting stinking Shocker, or Electro, and he's calling him like Electro, and he's calling him all these things, and he gives him his name.
Yeah.
You know? And it's just cool how he creates his relationships with these guys. You know, even in the movies, in the cinematic universe, he gives them their names.
Yeah.
You know, and creates relationships with these people, even before they're actual villains. There's some type of connection with them. You know, be it a doctor, Doc Ock.
We're gonna hit that. We're gonna hit that in a minute. How it seems like a lot of the times with Spider-Man, it feels like he was involved in some way in them becoming the villain that they are. What about you, Griffin? Why do you think that they become? Why do you think his rogue gallery is so fascinating and interesting?
Yes. All right. So exactly just what you said. There's a lot of them. Obviously, the big ones. Doc Ock, Green Goblin. There's a lot of those main ones, and whatever continuity you watch, like it's cool because he does have something to do with it majority of the time. Now there's Spider-Man villains that necessarily he doesn't have anything to do with, but the most like those key villains, that everybody knows, Doc Ock, Green Goblin, and whatever continuity that you look at, it's like he does have a personal connection with them, and I think that is what sets him apart. Not only that, but I think the personal connection he has to the villains, which and I'll set that apart from. I know we're doing Spider-Man, but like I believe Batman has the best rogues gallery.
That's the number one.
But what makes Spider-Man number 2 and like really good, sets him apart, is that he has a personal connection with more villains than Batman does with his. So,
what about you, Blythe? Why do you think?
I think it's what back in the day, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and the creators of these original characters set out to do, and it was to make a more personable superhero, which they also did with their villains. Norman Osborn was a crap dad because all he cared about was his business, and it made him a villain on 2 fronts, on a personal and like a super villain. Same thing with
like Doc Ock, just a scientist trying to do something, and it goes awry, and he creates and makes himself a supervillain. So I think that the reason why his rogues gallery hits so hard, and they just have a personable level to them. You can enjoy the villains, and this is the same with the Batman villains. If you enjoy your villains as much as you enjoy your superhero, then that gives them a great group of villains to have. You relate to them. You can see it from their side. They may be doing horrible things, but they have their reasons for doing it.
It was, especially like on the cartoons and all that, it was very much the how do I put this? It's like a team story instead of just a single person, because a single person is going to get boring. Mm-hmm. But I mean, let's be honest, the 90s Spider-Man was as interesting as the X-Men cartoon, because I mean, it was so rich. They had, they introduced the Sinister Six and Hobgoblin and everybody. But they made it into a team story, if that makes sense. And let's be honest. I mean, one of the biggest things you can complain about with Peter, he doesn't really evolve that much. What you have with kid Peter is the exact same you have with adult Peter. I mean, other than, he gets married and there's a lot of story arc, but it's the villains that actually move the story. And it's been around for 70 some years, and we're still talking about him because of the villains. They would have had to have made him, well, we're going to make him a penguin now, I mean, and they tried to change him a few times, and we'll get into that later, but very much they've got to keep that character. And I think that's part of why people love Spider-Man and the villains. The villains made it possible that we can still enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I think.
They're also mostly animal based too.
Well, Goblin's not.
Well, not all of them, but a good rhino, scorpion. That's it.
That's two. There's two. Yeah, most of them.
Most of them.
Well, I thought that the villains really. I mean, the villains were interesting because they're what we've been reading since we could all read comics in the first place. Mm-hmm. But it got really interesting to me that I noticed the villains, and they're always there and they're always awesome. But I noticed the villains starting, I think, around the when they had everything turned into spiders, and all the cloning stuff happened and all that. And they used the nanotech technology, and that carried their, it was the great power thing.
Yeah.
Because with the nanotechnology, there was great power, but they didn't have the great responsibility. And I think everything was so on brand. And the more I'm thinking about it, Spider-Man is really freaking self-contained in that because of that, which I think is a great thing. Now, I want to hit, which I think is the best part of the villain universe, the anti-heroes. There is a lot of anti-heroes in Spider-Man, and he can go anywhere from hero worship with some of them to absolutely contempt with others, which I think I don't know which one I like better, but let's hit some of the our favorite anti-heroes. But I want to talk one he liked and one he hated real quick, and we'll talk Wolverine. Now, if you ever read which Spider-Man was it? It says it was a 10-issue arc where they go into the past. Peter and Logan go into the past, into like caveman era, and then they start skipping through time. It's convoluted, but it's a fantastic. It's one of my favorite Spider-Man stories. But I loved seeing, that was when Peter could grow up a little bit, so he could hold his own against Logan.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was definitely that hero worship, and that to me is fun because he can do the things that he wants to do, but his responsibility won't let him. And then on the other end, we have Deadpool, who he hates, and Deadpool loves him. So these are just, I love the dichotomy of the anti-hero. So what are some of your favorite anti-heroes and why, as far as the Spider-Man universe go? Let's start with Griffin on that.
I'll go ahead and say Deadpool. My first introduction to Deadpool and Spider-Man actually wasn't in the comics. It was in the video game Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, which I got right
Great
here.
game. Yes.
I love it. If for those of you on YouTube, you can see it there. But those of you listening, I have it with me. Play it. It's my personal favorite Spider-Man game. But it, like Dub said, it's a great game. There's a level on there. There's a story chapter with Deadpool and you as Spider-Man, and it is amazing. It explains it's all of the comics just put into one. But yes, that was my first experience with Deadpool, and I was like, this is perfect. This is the meshing like of the worlds, and I love how Deadpool is like obsessed with Spider-Man, and he's like a fan of him.
He's a fanboy.
He's a fanboy of Spider-Man, and Spider-Man just never knows how to take it, and he's just like, oh my, all right, whatever.
Yeah. So, Blythe, let's talk about a few of the anti-heroes to come from Spider-Man.
Sure. So we actually got
some of them are on my list.
First appearance of one of your favorites in Spider-Man, and that was the Punisher. The Punisher was originally hired as a mercenary to kill Spider-Man.
And in that same arc, we also saw Tombstone and we saw Blade in that same arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, he's got so many that he deals with: Anti-Venom, Venom. I think that his relationship with them comes from the fact that he is just a kid and he is still growing up. So those lines between what is right and what is wrong can sometimes be a bit hazy for him. And he sees, and some would say that the anti-hero route is the easier route, because instead of asking questions and trying to do everything you can to make sure everyone comes out unscathed in an event, they don't do that. They go in guns a-blazing, and it doesn't matter who they hurt or who they kill, but they get essentially the same job done.
Which and some of it, sometimes, let's be honest, that's who we would all rather be, because, well, this person's not going to come back now, but no, they're going to come back when Spider-Man deals with them and kill a bunch of people again.
So yeah, I think that he definitely, and I think one of the cool things about Spider-Man and his villains is that at some point, I feel like almost every villain has an anti-hero moment. They seem to learn from Spider-Man and see some of the things that he does, and almost don't have a choice but to assist him. Norman Osborn has had that multiple times throughout his
Doc
Ock has, especially with Superior Spider-Man, and he has a sacrificial moment at the end of that arc. But he just that's another one thing about his rogues gallery that is really awesome, is that they have a personal relationship with Spider-Man that makes them become almost an anti-hero.
And going along with every hero has an anti-hero moment, I think every villain has a hero moment in Spider-Man.
Sure.
Anybody that sticks around more than, say, 10 issues, they will have a moment of being heroic, which I have so much respect for the writers of Spider-Man, because they've never let that go.
Yeah.
Which is just gorgeous. Skeeter, what about you?
I went with Black Cat, since my other two were taken by the knuckleheads. Black Cat, I kind of feel like there was this kind of in the DC universe, there was a bit of a cat relationship
based on Catwoman, let's be honest,
with a hero there, but I think it worked well. I think that whole little darkness that they had, she was fully based on Catwoman, but I think I do, but she definitely played a lot of people pretty dark.
Now, honest question with Black Cat. Do you feel like that she would have been more of a hero and less of an anti-hero if there would have been no he wasn't with Gwen Stacy at the time. He was with Mary Jane at the time. If there was no Mary Jane, would she have been more of a hero? Because everyone's rooting for the Peter and Mary Jane thing. Do you think that would have changed the perspective of the writers and the people that reads the comic?
I don't think so. Just because she was a thief. She was a criminal.
With moments, definite huge moments of
heroic. But that's what makes her an anti-hero.
Yeah.
That she's a criminal that has moments where she does good things. That's basically the definition of an anti-hero. A bad person who does good things by it.
Yeah. So do you want to see Spidey as more of an anti-hero? Or do you like him being as straight-laced as he is?
No, he needs to be straight-laced. I think he has moments, especially when he originally gets the symbiote suit. He has moments of being that anti-hero, but Spidey's a straight-laced good kid.
Yeah.
That's who he is as a character. I don't want to, if I wanted to see anti-hero Spidey, I'd pick up a Venom comic book.
That's, you got a point on that too, which I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of Venom as we go.
You killed that, Blaze.
That was fantastic. Now, another thing that I think the Spider-Man universe has done better with the villains than anybody else is they put all the villains, even minor villains, into a bunch of different medias. We talked about the cartoons. Honestly, the Spider-Man cartoons, bar none, are the only thing to me that stands up to DC animation. They are just incredible. The storytelling and the time they spend with the villains, and they're all sympathetic villains. There is unless you get like a Mr. Sinister, nothing is 100% villain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've done such a good job about that. But they put them into video games. They put them into, like Griffin was saying, his first foray into Deadpool was through a Spider-Man video game. Spider-Man is like he's the gateway because he's the kid.
Yeah.
And I think that has been, it's so smart how they've done it. And I don't know, do you think they're intentionally not changing him at this point, or for all those years?
I think why would you? Why would you fix something that's not broken? Because
he's on the Mount Rushmore of comics,
Spider-Man, I believe he is one of the top 3 brands of superhero brands in the entire world. You have Batman, you have Superman, and you have Spider-Man. Those are the 3 most recognizable superheroes of all time. You can show a picture of Spider-Man to anyone on the planet, and they'll be able to tell you who that is.
Yep.
And I think that's because, like you said, they don't grow him up. They don't make him villainous. He is a character that you can grow up with. How many are your kids, Dub? Your kids, how long have they been watching Spider-Man?
Since they were born.
Mm-hmm. Same thing with...
How long have I been watching it? Since, at the very minimum, let's see, the Spider-Man cartoon came out around the same time I was born. I have literally never had a time in my life I didn't know who Spider-Man was.
And the same thing's going on with my little one now with Disney Plus and all the old series on there. They just made a new Spider-Man show that's directed at babies. They're little and animated, and it's fun. I sit there and watch it with them, and it's a good time. They have cameos from Black Panther and Hulk, and it's a fun little show. But Benjamin will grow up with Spider-Man. So I can't foresee them trying to change anything about Spider-Man because he works so well.
I can go back and pull pictures of Griffin from day one, where we built costumes.
If you build it, they will come. I'm sorry.
From the ground up of these little Spider-Man things. He ran around the house with capes and Spider-Man, whatever he could find to make Spider-Man stuff. And he's been a fan of Spider-Man since day one. I think if you chose a Spider-Man, his favorite, that's it. Yeah. His wall is filled today with Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah. I want to hit something else, except for the McFarlane era. Spider-Man has always been, and the villains have been safe for kids. The McFarlane era, that's questionable, but it was definitely a ethical battle. It was good and evil, and you knew who the bad guys were. You knew who the good guys were, and the bad guys, while they were scary, they weren't terrifying for a kid. And that's another thing they have just done so right.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think
the villains are just as safe for kids as Spider-Man himself. Like I said in this new show, they use Rhino and they use Green Goblin, and I've seen Green Goblin in ways where he's super scary. Mm-hmm. But then there's also ways that you can make Green Goblin where he's not scary and he is cool for little kids. So it's back to his villains. His villains are just as, it's a perfect storm of characters. Yeah. Really is what it is. From Spider-Man to all of his villains, you can use them in a way that will fit any generation, and that will continue to happen as we go forward, especially with all the movies and things that are coming out. Because one of the other things that Spider-Man does so well is they really use the multiverse to their advantage. And we have.
I think they do better than anybody does.
Yeah, they their villains are great among the multiverse as well. I would love to see Ultimate Green Goblin in a live action movie where he's an actual like monster of a man. Like that would be super cool to see. But yeah, I just I think that there will never be a point where we don't see a Spider-Man something in our lives.
Now let's look at the villains that have used Spider-Man as a jumping board or diving board that has went from they were just a villain in Spider-Man and they took on their own life. Like Batman has the Joker. He definitely took on his own life. But really, there's not a whole lot of other Batman villains that have their own life as much as the Spider-Man villains do. I want to talk about a couple of those. Let's talk Punisher, I think, definitely came in as a villain, and now he's one of the biggest, or he has been one of the biggest non-powered characters in Marvel. What are some of your favorites, ones that just made that jump from villain to superstar? And of course, let's hit this one because we're all going to talk about is Venom. And it depends on which person has the Venom costume. There's Eddie Brock and there's Flash Thompson. I prefer the Flash Thompson version. But that's comic book. But it's amazing how that this villain they've made into their own springboard. Who are some of your guys' favorites that have used it as a springboard? Let's start with Skeeter on this one.
So I think the way that he kind of transcended through different heroes was, and he's one of my favorites, is Kingpin. Just because he kind of, and Griffin and I were talking about this last night, because where did we see him most recently in Netflix?
Yeah.
We saw him a lot in Daredevil. So
and the original Daredevil, the Ben Affleck Daredevil.
Even in the Ben Affleck Daredevil with, probably one of the greatest, actors who ever played him, in my opinion. But I really think he just this guy, even in Spider-Verse, Kingpin was he was a beast. He was a monster. And they portrayed him as the comic book meant for him to be portrayed. He wasn't this obese monster.
Yeah.
He was this he was just a giant muscle
that you will break your hand on if you hit. That's comic lore, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like he propelled into other places, into other he stuck it, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how he could be used in other places, and you know, and that's good writing. I mean, that's just good comic book storytelling, because if you stick one place, and I think that's what Marvel's really good at, and DC's good too, especially, you know, in the television, in the TV universe, is that they're starting to get better and better and better at the different villains being in different places, but they're really getting good at sharing villains in different places.
Yeah,
and that's why I like Kingpin so much in the different places.
I almost feel like they could use Kingpin as a Coulson. He can pop up anywhere and he will just fit.
Yep. Totally.
The super villain story, super meta story, or regular crime scene story. He just will fit anywhere. I think that they've done a great job of designing him. Griffin, what about you? What's your favorite guy that got catapulted?
My favorite is probably got to be Norman Osborn.
He does some good stuff,
and really, like, I feel like he's underrated. I mean, I everybody, he's Green Goblin, and he's always going to be, especially for me. But he's also Iron Patriot for a while in the comics, and
the Dark Avengers.
Yes, in the Dark Avengers, and he, he's the guy. He's the. I don't want to go as far as to say that, but it's a good parallel between him and Lex Luthor. Like, he wants to, in some manners, he wants to take control of everything, of the situation. He wants to be the best, but there's also other incarnations of Norman who he's just crazy, and he's more intimate. But I like the more, like, me and Dad have been watching the Spectacular Spider-Man, and he is one of my favorite characters in there, because he's just so Norman. And like, if anybody's ever played the Spider-Man PlayStation 4, like, that is one of the best Norman Osborns I've ever seen. He's just so, like, big as life itself. Like, that's who he is.
And I tell you what, it didn't hurt who was playing him when the world, quote unquote, got introduced to him. Oh my gosh, what is his name?
William Defoe.
William Defoe, scariest looking dude on the freaking planet.
Looks like a goblin in real life.
He definitely gave a lot more credibility to the character.
That scene where is probably one of the best ones in comic book movie history. The one where he's in the mirror and he's playing both sides and having a conversation with himself.
So good.
That is one of the most, like, eerie, like, spine-tingling scenes that we've seen in a comic book movie, because he's so good on both ends of it. You can see the mental battle that's going on within him. And just to kind of piggyback off of what Griffin was saying, going into this next phase of Marvel movies for the MCU, for a long time now, we've heard that he's going to be teased in one way or another, and I really hope that they do him justice when they finally introduce him into the MCU, because he has such ties with the Dark Avengers and being Iron Patriot and things like that. I really want to see him. I want him to be one of those characters that moves throughout the movieverse and not just in Spider-Man movies,
because he can keep it all together more. He makes sense. He would lead the Sinister Six, basically.
I would love to see him be. I forgot her name on our last episode that we did, Valentina. How she's like, she seems to be like gathering all these people to make like a Dark Avengers team. I would love for when she's done, they all like walk into an office, and then he like spins in the chair, and he's
Hello,
like the
angels.
He's like the benefactor of what she's doing. That would be freaking fantastic.
Nice.
But I would have to say my favorite kind of villain that has been catapulted and made more of like a household name would probably be Doc Ock. I think that we've seen from Spider-Man 2 to Into the Spider-Verse. We've seen all these
Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Yes.
Superior Spider-Man.
Oh.
We've seen all these different renditions of Doc Ock and really what they can do with him as a character. That it really has me excited. I know when that Spider-Man trailer dropped, him being in it was one of the biggest highlights for a lot of Spider-Man fans because he was so great in Spider-Man 2. I am very excited to see him come back in that role because it was fantastic. And one of the things about Venom, Dev, because I know you mentioned him earlier, I like the arc where the symbiote goes everywhere and it infects like all the heroes.
Yeah,
to me,
forgot
it's just fun.
Was, yes,
it's just fun to see like Captain America with the Venom symbiote and Hulk with the Venom symbiote. And I think even what's the dinosaur's name? Devil Dinosaur or whatever. Even that got the Venom symbiote on it.
Yeah.
So that
and
those
I like
are
that
always fun.
I like that it's not just Venom. There's Carnage. There's Anti-Venom.
Sure.
There is a family of, and I hope that it makes it onto the screen as much as, because like the stuff with Anti-Venom. Oh my gosh, this guy puts Punisher to shame.
Yeah.
And he's technically a good guy.
I've heard that the newest the newest symbiote arc was pretty good, where they introduced that the symbiotes came from like a single being.
Yeah.
Like there's like a symbiote god.
And they reproduce. Yeah.
Yeah. So I heard that that's pretty cool. So really over the last 10 years, the mythos around the symbiote has really grown. Yeah. And gotten huge because it was such a great character. Then it started with Venom, then went to Carnage, then anti-Venom, and it grew and grew. And that's great storytelling when you can build a character from just a slime that got connected to Spider-Man's suit.
Now there's I want to hit real quick. There's 3 incarnations I can think of that Spider-Man was a bad guy, and that was one when he was cloned as Ben Reilly. It's not necessarily that he was a bad guy, but he was searching. There were some issues there, and then the Doc Ock when he took over his body, and when Spider-Man became Man Spider. Those are the only 3 instances I can think of that Spider-Man was a bad guy. No matter how many times they've cloned him and all that other stuff. And that just says something about the character. Because I know Stan Lee, I think part of his thing was you can never turn him bad. He always has to be a teenage male, blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
I think that was just so written into his DNA. But I just thought that was kind of an interesting take. And I know everyone wants to talk about Ben Reilly and Man Spider. No one wants it.
Don't talk about Man Spider.
Man Spider.
Why would you even bring that up?
Because it's funny. Okay, let's jump over to the main event.
Now it's time for the main event.
Okay, so for this version of the main event, we said, what are your top 5 villains of Spider-Man? Let's be honest, nobody put these in order, and we could do this all day and we still won't even scratch the surface. So if you'd like to comment on our YouTube or our Facebook and tell us who we missed, we will be more than happy to listen and discuss it back with you. And while you're at it, subscribe and like and go to the YouTube and the Facebook and the Twitters and all that stuff. Because sorry, I know we are on internet fatigue right now, but this is a nice little family. It's worth investing in. So we try to make this a community that everybody's welcome. So with that being said, top 5. My number 5 is going to be Carnage. I always found Carnage more interesting than Venom because Venom I always felt there's always a line he wouldn't pass. Carnage had no line. He was the symbiote with the Joker. He is. I don't even know that I would say he's evil. I mean, he's evil, but he's not evil for the sake of being evil. he's evil because he has no conscience. Which is very much like the Joker. He finds things funny that you shouldn't find funny. He watches too much Tarantino. I'm just saying.
Pretty sure that Dub just said a serial killer isn't evil.
Okay. Well, thanks for making me look bad, Blythe. I appreciate that.
Hey, man. Whatever you're into, buddy.
What's his name was a clown.
Joker?
That one serial killer back.
Oh, John
back
Wayne Gacy? Yeah.
Oh, John
Go.
Wayne Gacy. Yeah, no, he.
Ew, yeah, let's stay off of this topic. Okay, so let's start with Griffin. Who is your number 5, sir?
My number 5 is actually you kind of made me think about this. It is Spider Carnage. For those of you who don't know Spider Carnage, he appeared, I believe, aired in the Spider-Man cartoon in '94, in the '90s, like with the X-Men. At the end, they do a whole Spider-Verse plot, which is amazing. It's so
Watch
great. It is amazing.
6 episodes. Watch it all.
And the villain of it all is called Spider Carnage, and it's if the Carnage symbiote get how would you say it? Combines with Peter. It joins with Peter, and he loses all of his I guess morality, and all the Uncle Ben stuff goes out the door, and he is just this like bad, like he is the bad of bad, like you could think of it. And it is a really great story. But he is probably my number 5. Because everybody knows the symbiotes are such a great. Everybody loves Venom. I used to love Venom as a kid. Like he was my favorite. But
it just looked cool. Black Spider-Man.
Yeah, he was my favorite as a kid. But then the older I got, and I was just like, man, he is so like, because he used to be special. Like he wasn't used a lot. He was used very sparingly, and I loved it. And then now he is like so popular, and so I'm just kind of like I moved away from Venom. But Spider Carnage is my number 5 for sure.
Very good. Blythe, what is your number 5, sir?
My number 5 is Hammerhead. Specifically the one in Spider-Man PS4. I just liked that character as like it's just one of those characters that really brought the universe together. Like you don't see much of him, but when he pops up, it's like, oh, that's Hammerhead. And he just really is a cool villain. Like
he's a cheese ball, but
yeah,
it doesn't feel cheesy.
Yeah, he totally is like 1920s, like mafia bodyguard. I believe at this point in the canon, like his bones are adamantium because of a deal he made with Tombstone or something like that. So it's just one of those characters that has like an arc that's evolved them over time, but never really seems to get the spotlight that he deserves. So Hammerhead, this one's for you, buddy.
That's a good one. Actually,
he's amazing in Spectacular Spider-Man,
and he's great in the Amazing Spider-Man.
Superstar henchman, gotta love him.
Yeah. We all have our interactions with him, and I think he's just a great side character.
Skeeter?
My number 5, Alexi Michelovich, Sitstevich, or as we know him as Rhino.
Oh, there you go.
Amazing. I love his beginnings as just a thief.
Then he gets screwed over.
Just got
like Kingpin
hosed,
does. Yeah.
Got left behind, and just ends up being this bad dude and comes out hardcore. I love his portrayal by Paul Giamatti, and then just ends up being kind of left for nothing with Sony, I wish there was more. But
luckily it's a lot of
I noticed something when I was kind of researching and building my 5. There are a lot of Russian bads in the Spider-Verse.
Well, look when it was created.
Yeah.
Right?
Cold War era.
I mean, Stan Lee and his crew were Yeah, they were
They were
building-
trying to get away from the bad German people, which we're not going to mention that, but
right.
therefore they went to the Russians.
So they went to the Russians. They really did. So just well played. I loved Rhino. He's really cool, and they just played it well. So he's my number 5.
Very good. My number 4 is somebody that everybody forgets about, but another one that just kind of dove off and got his own comic series and everything, which is the living vampire Mobius.
Yeah, getting his own movie.
Yeah, he is. When he was a human, he was a creep. There's nothing I liked about him. When he became the bad guy, he became sympathetic. Just very interesting way. And when I love seeing, I don't know if you ever saw this before, but there's times that Morbius and Blade teamed up, which so much fun. I mean, he's just 100% fun all the way around. Once you get past the tragic start, the rest of it is just fun. And I guess that's probably more anti-hero than bad guy, but I don't care. He started out as a bad guy, so we're going to call him a bad guy. Griffin, what is your number 4, sir?
Number 4 is Craven the Hunter.
Craven's Last Hunt.
Yeah, one of those reasons. But in every sort of media that we've seen him in is it's just incredible. I love the fact that he's not just the typical, like, he always puts up a fight. He always, like, with Spider-Man, it's like, Spider-Man's gonna win. He's gonna get away. He's gonna make it out. But you also know that Craven is, like, gonna toy with him, but he's also gonna, like, there's like a tension built up.
He's
You're
smart,
like, oh, like, that Craven's gonna, like, get a few good hits in. So it's like, I love Craven for that, and plus he's just like the thrill of the hunt, and I just love his character. He's definitely he's my number 4.
Lies, what's your number 4, sir?
My number 4 is Venom. We've talked about him quite a bit. I think my favorite version of Venom is the Spider-Man 3 Sam Raimi Venom.
Shut your dirty pie hole now. You were waiting for a laugh there, and you just made me angry. That's all we got is just anger now.
No, I think that what he's done as like I said earlier, just something that was originally a piece of goop that got connected to Spider-Man's suit has now evolved into its own franchise, and just its own huge thing. He's almost, you could say, he's like the Harley Quinn for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Just this side kind of B character that the fandom just kind of latched onto, and the franchise just rolled with it and made him into this beast that he is today. I'm interested to see what they do with him in the movies going forward. We just had Venom 2 come out, which I'm not going to say anything here because we may have some listeners that haven't seen it yet, but there seems to be some implications for what's going on in the movieverse going forward. So I'm excited to see how all that plays out.
Very good. Skeeter.
My number 4 is the former small-time criminal who built himself his own little battle suit, literally had nothing, was Shocker, his vibro shock gauntlets, but the Shocker was definitely the beast. He killed it. Just power. He was a powerhouse. Watching, and I got this literally watching Spectacular the other night with Griff. He was mashing Spider-Man. Like, these vibro shocks that he was sending out, he was just thrashing Spider-Man all over the place.
Yeah.
Anytime he hit him, he'd throw him across the wall, throw him across the room. I was like, dude, he's destroying him. But his suit was so freaking cool that he got, who'd he get it from? He got a suit from, I can't remember who he ended up getting his suit from Hammerhead.
In the show, he got it from Hammerhead.
That's right. So, but I loved his character. I loved who he was. Just a great time.
Nice. Okay, my number 3 is it's Tombstone, and honestly, it's a sentimental reason. When I started reading the Spider-Man comics, I mean, I've been watching the cartoon growing up. When I started reading the comics was during Trial of Spider-Man, and that's when you get introduced to this is like the beginning of Tombstone, and it just really resonated with me. It's like he came into comics the same time I am, so it's I know that's just something in my head that I feel like he's part of my comic path, but just a great character. I mean, he looks almost identical to like a really really white Punisher. Yeah, but he's a fun character in small doses. He's one I don't want to see in the big screen because I don't think they can pull him off. Because there is that sharpened teeth, and
Sure.
I don't know if they can pull it off on screen without making it look cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. Griffin, what is your number 3, sir?
My number 3 is Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin.
Green Goblin 1.
That is my number 3, strictly because I mean, ever since I was 2 or 3 years old, and I have to give credit where credit's due. William Defoe.
Yeah.
I really hope to see him again in Spider-Man No Way Home, which it seems like I wanted to say, everybody freaked out when Alfred Molina's Doc Ock came in, which I did too. It was great. But
Defoe was better.
It blew my mind when you see
Pumpkin
the
Bomb.
Goblin, the Pumpkin Bomb roll, and you hear his laugh. I lost my mind. If anything, I would sacrifice all of it. I don't even want, I would sacrifice the rumors that Andrew and Toby are in the film. As much as I love Toby, and I want him in the movie, I would sacrifice all of those just to get a William Dafoe Green Goblin again. That is, he made Green Goblin for me. Whenever I think of Green Goblin, I think of William Dafoe. He's just
it's hard not to. He made it iconic.
Yeah.
Lies?
My number 3 is the Vulture, specifically Michael Keaton's portrayal in Spider-Man
It was
Homecoming.
different, yeah.
And that's why I liked it. They took this character that, honestly, for the better part of his creation, has been kind of a joke. He's like this old man who wears a bird suit.
Sometimes young.
Yeah, sometimes he's young. Most of the time, he's like an old guy. But Michael Keaton, he made that role into something special, into a character that you really could sympathize with his business being taken away by Tony Stark and him just going bad, and just really cool effects. Really, just really made that movie. It set it up for the Spider-Man movies going forward, and really getting me excited about the universe because Michael Keaton is just great.
Yeah, and he wasn't completely in the wrong in that movie at all.
No,
just leaving it there. Skeeter, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is one of my all-time favorites, played really amazingly by Jamie Foxx, but Electro.
You have to think about electricity in your villains, I've noticed.
Yeah.
You go from Shocker to Electro.
So, yeah, Electro, their backstory is what I love. Just a normal dude, fixing some electricity. Jamie Foxx, the way his story was written, that was some of the best writing for a character I've ever seen. Just wanted to be somebody's friend. Just wanted to be noticed, and ended up getting hurt, getting left behind, and then becoming who he became. Oh my gosh, just an amazing character that never you never saw him as I never really saw him as a villain in any facet. He just became, drunk with power.
Yeah.
Literally. So I love that character and who they became. So Electro's my number 3.
Very good. Okay, my number 2, just FYI, I changed it. It was Anti-Venom, but we've talked about him a lot. So I thought I would move in Hobgoblin. For this reason, I think the Green Goblin, because of the Defoe stuff, as he's gotten all the attention. Hobgoblin is the creepier bad guy. Yes, he's a copy of Green Goblin, but he has no pure motives. He has no excuse other than he is just evil. And I always thought he was scarier looking. Hobgoblin always scared me. Green Goblin didn't. When I was looking through the comics when I was a kid, I liked Green Goblin or Hobgoblin as far as this guy is the bad guy. It just felt a lot more that way to me. Griffin, what is your number 2, sir?
Number 2 is Dr. Octopus. So like obviously I hit out of feel like all of us have hit the main, like a lot of everybody's like, oh, main staples. But honestly I have to say Doc Ock, for a lot of reasons. The Spider-Man PS4 Doc Ock, that is a really, he's up there with Alfred Molina. I mean, Alfred Molina is obviously the best, but just to stay away from that, my favorite incarnation of Doc Ock really is Spectacular Spider-Man Doc Ock. If you've seen the Spectacular Spider-Man, it takes a lot of inspiration from the Raimi movies, but the voice actor, I can't remember the voice actor who played him. But he's this not tiny, but he's this little short scientist, and he's just trying to make all these, for Mr. Osborn, he's trying to do all these experiments for him. And when he calls Spider-Man, he just calls him Arachnid and stuff like that all the time. And he has that little gravel voice. And he's the leader of the Sinister Six. In some forms. I definitely liked him better as the leader than Norman Osborn at some points or Green Goblin.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my number 2.
And I want to hop on and give a recommendation. If you're a Doc Ock fan, get a hold of the run that's Superior Spider-Man. I think it was like 40 issues, somewhere in there. It's Doc Ock takes over Spider-Man's body when Peter dies. It's temporary, just like everything else in comics. So, but I recommend reading the Superior Spider-Man. It's a great take and a great redemption story. Blythe, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is Mr. Negative. He is that face you have is I like him because he's one of those characters that does not pop up all that often, but he just has a really cool like power set. Like it's when you see it, I don't know if you guys have ever played the Spider-Man PS4 game, but he was like the highlight of that game. And he has this power that like turns things into like that like old photo negative look, and I think it like deteriorates them, but just a cool villain with a different kind of power set that I really enjoyed in that game. I liked how that game took made the main villain out of a character you wouldn't have expected. Like you expect a Norman Osborn, or they put Doc Ock in there, but Doc Ock wasn't really a villain until the end of the game. Like you worked with him throughout the game, and that's what made that character so cool in that game, was that you really sympathized with him throughout the game. But yeah, just a really good use of a not so known character.
Very good. Skeeter, your number 2?
My number 2, talked about him earlier. Don't got to talk a lot about him because he's one of my all-time favorites. But Kingpin, will always be
Yeah.
up there for me. Just love him. Great villain.
Very good. Okay, my number one villain of Spider-Man is Spider-Man using webbing as a bungee cord. Oh, too soon?
Eesh.
Yeesh. No, my number one, I'm going to, because of the backstory and the relationship, and it's not necessarily that I love the character, I love the relationship of the Lizard. Very good guy, turned evil sometimes, and it's a heartbreaking story, but yeah, I just wanted, I didn't see Lizard mentioned on anybody's list, so that's why I threw that on there, because I think that he's a character that gets overlooked a lot, but I love the way he was written. Griffin, what is your number one, sir?
My number one is the Master of Illusion, Mysterio himself. He is my favorite Spider-Man villain. He's my favorite Marvel villain. He will go down in history. He's my favorite, not because of Spider-Man Far From Home, but actually because of Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. He's a villain in that game, which I grew up with. Spider-Man Friend or Foe, which is another game that was not well viewed at all, but it was one I grew up with and I enjoyed. But I love Mysterio so much. He's definitely one of the more he's starting to become popular again, but he's one of the more underrated Spider-Man villains, in Fishbowl Head, so
Yeah.
but he is my favorite, I think, because of that. When you see Mysterio, you're just like, wait, what? And I'm so happy that I'm able to live in a world where I got to see Mysterio in a movie.
Yeah.
And have such a prolific role in a film. So I'm excited.
My favorite incarnation was the Shattered Dimensions one. I loved that.
That's my favorite.
I loved that take on it.
Yes.
Liz, what's your number one, sir?
My number one was Skeeter's number two, and that's Kingpin. It just, like we've talked about, just one of those great characters that isn't just seated in Spider-Man, but seated within all of the like street level heroes. And it's just one of those characters where I actually couldn't tell you where he first appeared, but if it was in a Spider-Man or in a Daredevil, he just has evolved past being a single hero's villain and has just made his way into being so much. And then one thing I wanted to piggyback off of Griffin's number one, Mysterio, I really hope we get a Bruce Campbell cameo in the new Spider-Verse movie.
Nothing in the world would make me happier.
Oh my, I would love to see his theorized Mysterio pan out in those movies.
And you know what, Blaze? I will straight up say, like, if you want to believe that he's Mysterio in the Raimi, believe it, because he was set to be Mysterio, and he's in all three of those movies. He is Mysterio. I would have loved to see it finally in the Spider-Man 4.
Yeah.
But to me, when I see him in all of his cameos, the different roles that he plays, I'm like, that's Quentin Beck. Like,
aren't you Topher Grace for ruining it?
Yeah.
Peter, what is your number one, sir?
Okay, my number one, and I freaking dude's a beast, literally. But Craven the Hunter, I just he's a big game hunter, skilled in just about everything, bow staff skills. No, oh wait,
are you about to pull Napoleon Dynamite there?
No, hand-to-hand combat.
Does he have a Liger?
Right, he's got his, the magic jungle potion for his speed, strength, and tracking skills. But like, he's just bad. And then you find out, well, his half brother's the original villain of the Spider-Verse, Chameleon. So like, all of these things, it's
spoilers.
Sorry. If you want a spoiler from 1963, I think Craven is one of the penultimate freaking villains ever created, ever. But we get some of the greatest in Spider-Man, who is absolutely hands down one of the greatest heroes in comic book lore ever. Stan Lee, R.I.P. Just those guys knew what they were doing.
Yep.
I mean, they say that when he wrote this, he wrote it about his own story, and I feel like it was right. You know, he did the right thing. So,
well, that is a show, guys. Do not be villains. Be the good guy, or at the very minimum, be the anti-hero.
Don't be anti-hero. They're bad.
Sometimes. I'm Dub. I'm here with Skeeter. I'm here with Griffin. I'm here with Blythe. Keep on geeking on, guys. Check out everything. We'll see you next week.
You have been listening to the latest episode of the iHeart Geek Show. Make sure you visit our website at www.iheartgeekshow.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you check us out on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And keep on geeking on to all of you geek rock stars.